Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and listening. We have Larry with us on our update. Hi, Larry. How's it going?
Oh, Stuart, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Boy, there seems to be a lot, let's put it this way, acceleration in events. Why don't we start with this North Korean thing? This thing is beginning to sound like it could go live about any time. Trump's just not really saying much. But with the latest missile launches, what's going on over there?
Well, over the weekend, as you well know, especially on Fox, they were sharing information from, some experts on missile technology, and they are now claiming, and have all weekend, that North Korean missile could hit as far into the U.S. as Chicago, or possibly further. So pretty much the data is that, North Korea's almost got their missile technology ready to use if they wish to. They did say, though, that their data indicated that the nose cone of the latest missile that North Korea fired burned up on reentry. And so that would be a problem for the North Koreans, but they're very concerned. They've had meetings, I think today, the Prime Minister of Japan talked with Trump by phone, and South Korea is reconsidering more THAAD units, and apparently Japan and South Korea, the region, is getting ready for a possible confrontation with North Korea. So, that's kind of where that stands. Like you said, it only takes one flashpoint, and then things go downhill from there.
Yeah, I do remember Trump making a comment about the Chinese and how they're not doing anything to stop it, which tends to confirm this is a trap, and they're going to aggravate Trump until he actually does something. Because they're the ones that would benefit. Russia and China, as we said on one of the other programs, benefit immensely for the mineral wealth of Korea, because once we take Kim out, they can go in and take over, and there would be absolutely nothing we could do about it. So, but some of the comments coming out of the military and on Fox News are that we have to do something now. We just can't sit back twiddling our thumbs, so to speak. So do you think we will see maybe some action here in the very near future? I mean, they've exhausted almost every diplomatic avenue they have.
Well, and the interesting thing is, the Bush, actually the Clinton years, that's 8 years. The Bush years, that's 8 years. And the Obama years, that's 8 more years. You've got 3 times 8 years that the North Koreans have got everything they wanted. They won every bluster. They won every bluff. Anything they did, they came out on top, and they have obtained their nukes. And so how could you rationally deal with Kim on a threat basis when he's not going to believe it anyway? I mean, that's how you start wars, is by not actually standing up to someone who's your mortal enemy. It's just like a big bully on the block. The more you cow down and try to ignore him, the more he stomps your head in. But, of course, America's not smart enough to learn that, I suppose, even over the years.
Yeah, it's kind of odd because, World War II was really the last time, and we were kind of, trapped into that by Roosevelt. They knew perfectly well what was going on. And this thing, you got to always go back to Psalm 2, the foundation of the whole thing. And the Psalm 2 war and that the kings of the earth gather themselves together. And the ultimate goal, of course, is to destroy Christianity, destroy the concept of God the Father, His Son, the Redeemer, and the Holy Ghost, and try and get rid of all of that in order to bring in their Luciferian world order religion, which is really humanity-based. Man becomes God, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Very much New Age is actually the concept. So when we look at all of this sort of thing happening, we have to always, I guess, keep in mind Psalm 2. Speaking about war, though, and Psalm 2 and rulers, it seems that Iran and North Korea are kind of walking lockstep. What's the latest from that area of the world?
Well, the most interesting report came out today on Debka out of Israel, and it is claiming, and this is what the result has came out of, even though Russia and China have stayed pretty much in the background, and the axis between North Korea and Iran has worked on the nuke systems and terrorism around the world and all of that. This is a kind of a chilling report because it says, and this is Debka out of Israel, this is the headline. It says Trump, Putin, and Xi, and of course we're talking about there the USA and Russia and China, talking points fades to a show of force as three world leaders remove the gloves of diplomacy for resolving differences and in turn flex their military muscles. So no matter what North Korea and Iran is doing, this has brought to the table a very possible confrontation between the U.S., China, and Russia. But you know, even as that is working, you have Trump actually under double missile threat because Iran has been firing ballistic missiles, and you know, their boats in the offshore have been threatening U.S. ships, and at the same time you've got North Korea firing ballistic missiles and issuing threats and firing their guns, and so you really, you know, when you put it all on Trump's back, you wonder how he can actually carry the burden, so to speak. He's come up almost an invincible wall of opposition that's been formed by at least three presidential administrations that have brought it to this point, and none of them have handled anything. You know, and so what we're looking at, and this is the interesting part, is Trump is not really a striking figure for backing down. So, you know, we know that there's going to be a flashpoint somewhere. There's no other way. And of course, on the other hand, and I'd like your opinion on this, actually Putin came out today and over the weekend and decided, since Congress passed the new sanctions against Russia, that he's going to expel something like 755, I guess they call them or Department of State employees, which probably a lot of CIA in there too. But he's expelling a bunch from his country and stating that apparently him and Trump are not going to have any dialogue for some time because the Congress is not going to allow it. And so we see that the opposition is really negating Trump and Putin talking with a dialogue that would prevent a World War III. So what do you think?
Well, you know, when they brought up that sanctions bill, there were more than several warnings that this was going to remove Trump from having any ability to do what he wanted, and the deep state, which is the establishment, have decided to strip him of any ability. And actually what it looks like to me is exactly what you said. They want a war. They got to have their war. You got to have World War III in order to bring your chaos about. And also, of course, you have to have in the background the order that comes out of the chaos. It's all masonry, actually. Mystery Babylon is, if you look up the word mystery from Revelation, I believe it is 17, and take a really good look at it, it is masonry for the most part. And that dovetails right into Trump and the Masonic Wars. You were doing some Bible code research or backing up and looking at some of the older codes from Barry Rothman. What's going on there? It's been a little while since we reviewed that, but it seems like he's probably pretty much on target.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. I wanted to ask him about, what his opinion from his Torah codes that he's run on North Korea. I wanted to ask him where he thought this may be going, and of course we ran out of time. I mean, we got into all kind of stuff with Barry, and we ran out of time on that. But I went back and looked at some of the data, and I'm looking like one that he ran on March the 19th, 2017. He ran two codes, and here they are. Number 1, Korean fire. Number 2, Kim. Number 3, atomic. Number 4, war. And then the next one is the Tillerson matrix. It's R. Tillerson, which is the State Department head, 2, Korean. 3, war. 4, assassination. 5, revolution. 6, the plague. 7, UN. 8, moon. 9, president. 10, leader. 11, to fear. 12, stealthy. And I began to look at that, and Barry had made a comment that was an enormous number of threats encoded in those two Torah codes. And then another one he did in April actually showed China, Korea, Japan, Kim, war, rocket, overthrowal, cyber. And so that's an incredible amount of data in the Torah code, Stuart, to indicate that with Kim, it appears there's nothing in the future but atomic war and his overthrow or destruction eventually. And this is what I was wondering, Stuart. And that's one thing. I want to make this comment before I give you that question, but one of my comments is this. We've looked, you and I have, for a number of years, and there's a lot of skeptics about the Torah codes. But you know what?
Yes.
When you look at we can't interpret them. We don't have the full picture in any of those Torah codes, but the Torah codes do give us words. And none of these words can be negated by anybody. There's nobody out there that has any historical look at all that can look back at these words and say, well, they're irrelevant, because they're not. They're relevant. They're very important, and they point to something. Now, our imagination of where they point to, we have to hold in rein. But I wanted to ask you this question, though. When looking at that, is it by chance, Stuart, and we know that even Ed Ames admitted that we were frustrated when we wanted to go war against Russia for a number of years now. We've had frustrations and we found ourselves incapable of actually performing it like we wanted to. So a preemptive attack never worked against Russia. And we know what biblically Russia does to the USA or Babylon. But I wanted to ask you this question, what you thought. Do you think possibly that in the initial stages, the U.S. will find itself having to go to war with the proxies first? In other words, North Korea and Iran, and as we are in Syria, et cetera, and then at a later time we confront China and Russia?
Well, that's I guess that's kind of hard to answer, but if you go to the Armageddon script, where war breaks out suddenly in North Korea, it breaks out with China and Taiwan, and of course we have the islands out there, excuse me, in the Pacific, where China builds these artificial islands and then claims territorial rights, which is kind of, I guess, sneaky move. And some of the words in that Torah code indicate this is stealth. This is by deception. In other words, it's not what it appears to be. But I've often wondered, as I have said, one of the little comments about America Babylon appears to be that surely the least of them shall draw him out. In other words, the leader of Babylon. Doesn't say who that is at the point. But it's kind of interesting that here's little Kim with his not so much toy matches, but he's basically a nobody when it comes to world leaders, and yet he's apparently going to be one of the most dangerous of all of them. Now, it is possible he's just going to try and shake down the West again, as he's almost always done, or he's going to get provoked, as Major Dame says, and start a nuclear war. And as you said, once you start it, where does it end? And because we know that North Korea and Iran are involved in this together, almost like in lockstep, then we might very well be looking at the North Korean conflict, which then triggers in turn the Iran Daniel 8 concept, which in turn triggers Damascus going down, which in turn triggers Ezekiel 38 and 39. So I guess we just have to kind of wait and see. But with this 9/23 date popping up, with this solar eclipse popping up in August, the timing for the instability of the world and the rhetoric, like you were saying, where the world leaders have now just decided, well, let's just go to war, and we'll figure out who the winner is after the smoke clears. There's no question that not only does Iran want a major war, a huge conflict, that's for their Antichrist to emerge from, which when you really stop and think about it, doesn't the Masons more or less say the same thing? They have to have a world war in order to bring about the chaos, and out of the ruins of the chaos comes the new order of things. So I think we're on the verge of this chain reaction. But again, you got to go back to Psalm 2, and it's all scripted. Like the Armageddon script is a script. And when you look at prophecy and you stand away from it and just kind of look at the world as though you're on the moon, it all begins to fall into place, and you really begin to see the big picture that God has an agenda, and he says, my hand is stretched out upon the nations, and I have proposed, and I'm going to do what I propose, and who's going to stop me? In other words, he's mocking humanity, he's mocking the United Nations, and he's saying, humanity, I'm going to do what I want to do to planet Earth, and you can't do anything about it. In fact, what they're doing, of course, is playing right into his hands. And it's kind of sad to watch, because the vast majority of humanity will not admit whatsoever that they are a fallen race. You know, you look at the UFOs, and you look at the so-called fallen angels, you look at demons, you look at the paranormal and all these shape-shifting stuff that's going on. By the way, it is really going on now. Humanity views those as the fallen ones. We're in league with them. We are fallen creatures. Or, if we're not, Jesus Christ is the biggest liar that ever walked on planet Earth. Because he claimed we were not only fallen, we were prisoners. And it was Satan himself that held us fast. We have a veil over our minds, and we cannot discern the real truth because of that veil. And of course, Jesus said he came behind enemy lines to rescue us. Well, if we're not fallen, we certainly don't need rescue, do we? So when you really look at this whole thing, he's sort of letting humanity go do its own thing. It's kind of like putting a baby in a what do you call those little things that you put babies in? Playpen. And you put a few toys in there, and if you're real cruel, you put a toy in there that they'll find, like matches, and they'll start playing with the matches. And that's about where we are right now. We're right on the verge of playing with the nuclear matches. And the missiles are going to start to fly. The only question I have, do they fly before the 923 star sign? Or do they start right around that time period? I don't know. Does that rant tell you anything?
Well, that's kind of interesting because, here we are approaching October of 2017, and I still remember that experience of the missiles of October that never occurred. One thing I was looking to, the reason I brought up North Korea and Iran first was, remember Rabbi Glazerson had run that code that was 5777 Iran from the Yemen missile, and he mentioned the rectification of Yeshua and the 5777 date. He called it the Yeshua code. And yes. I don't know if you knew, but I think we mentioned it the last show we did that Yemen, Iran was behind firing of a Scud missile towards Riyadh, a few months ago. Well, now over the weekend they fired a ballistic missile out of Yemen, which is in this code towards the holy place there that they meet at.
Oh, you mean Mecca? Yeah, Mecca.
They fired it at Mecca, but Saudi Arabia was able to shoot it down with a defense system. And so, this North Korea and Iran are continually provoking, even through their proxies, trouble. I mean, it's like the trouble doesn't stop. So that's why I was mentioning it. It's really interesting that we're seeing all of this at this time, but a little bit of the unnerving part is where Trump, Putin, and Xi begins to pull off the gloves of diplomacy and begin to muscle the military, because you don't have to have but one mess up and you can go to war. And it's interesting to note, on the other hand, too, that it appears deep state and actually a whole lot of Republicans want to go to war.
Yeah, they do, and they're idiots. But what else can you say about deep state? What they're really doing is Psalm 2. They're telling God himself, we don't think so. We are the ones who run planet Earth, not you. Well, Psalm 2 says he just laughs at them. And then he causes major trouble, and he tells them they better kiss Jesus Christ lest they be destroyed and go into eternal ruin. Well, there is such a deep hatred for Christianity or the Lord Jesus Christ himself and God the Father that I think they have made up their mind that this is it. They're going to pull out all the plugs, and they're going to attempt, like Standeo says, to create the weapons, which is what he basically says they're doing. is to create the weapons to eliminate Jesus Christ upon his arrival. I can't imagine any more stupid thing to do than to attempt that. If Jesus Christ is Alpha and Omega, which is what he says he is, and he knows the beginning from the end, how do you outsmart him? You can't.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, if he knows time from the beginning to the end already, do you think you're going to build a weapon you can even use against him anyway? He would already know it was there. He would
yes.
know all of that.
Yeah, that's the stupidity part of it. And I've never understood how come really people of extreme intelligence decide they're going to challenge their creator. And I'm not so sure they really understand time and space all that well. And I'm no expert on it, but I know one thing. He created it. He's outside of it. He created time, space, energy, matter, spirit, life. He created all of this. He knows what's going to happen. It's impossible to defeat. And I don't know, it's a form of insanity, I guess. The deep state, and really this is what this is all about, all the world leaders. They're trying to get together to destroy God, if they can do it. And I've often thought, as you and I have talked, that CERN, and now they're building, I guess, in China, a huge one that's 5 times bigger. I doubt if they'll ever get it built, but the fact is they're trying. They're trying to open up a doorway, I think, so they can slip outside of time and space. And there's a fellow, and I never can remember his name, but he did a lot of research where Daniel makes a comment that they literally try to storm Heaven's Gate, but of course they're instantly defeated. But the fact that they would even try tells you where a lot of this stuff is really coming from, and I just don't think that people realize the awesome, absolutely awesome, and that's not even a good word, of the power or the intelligence of the Creator. We are sub Neanderthals as far as he's concerned, even the most brilliant of us. You know, we're toying with something we do not understand at all. And I don't know. What do you think? I just think it's total foolishness myself.
Well, I think that's pretty much why he wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, is the stupidity of man continues. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And, you know, and that's what's interesting. You know, all of these people that think they're going to outsmart the Creator and that they're going to, you know, actually come out on top in these contests that they seem to have time after time after time following, I guess, Lucifer's reign, they forget to wonder about what's all this extra stuff out in the universe that used to be planets and stars and all this. Reckon something happened, you know, he can defend himself, and he can take out planets, and he can take out whole galaxies if he chooses.
Absolutely. In fact, I believe that's what the asteroid belt really is. If you go into Ezekiel and read about Satan, he had a huge planet, and the Lord said he destroyed it. Well, we got an asteroid belt that most scientists believe really was at one time a fairly large planet. And also, of course, it says he was going back and forth among the stones of fire. Well, that's planets. So obviously he was here on Earth. I believe if you read Genesis correctly, Satan had his kingdom here, and one of the reasons he's so angry is that the Lord, in this war, a real Star Wars, decided he was going to fix planet Earth up again and put humanity here and see what would happen there. So Satan was in the garden. Why was he there? Well, he was there to try and trick Adam and Eve, which he did. That's why he's called the prince and power of the air. He runs it. That's why he told Jesus Christ. Remember, they went up on a high tower, and Satan said to the Lord, if you'll just bow down and worship me, I'll give you all these kingdoms. They're mine. I have them. I own them. Well, the funny part of this is Jesus never contradicted him.
That's right.
So he does own them. And he is the prince and power of the air. So I guess when you really start looking at all of this, the whole orientation of the Bible is to convince humankind, number one, they're fallen. Number two, they desperately need a redeemer. And number three, if they refuse the offer, they're going down with Satan himself. And, of course, as you and I know, most of humanity has refused the offer. And on it goes. But we are dealing with a God who, it's so awesome you can't even describe it. You remember that when we were looking at star signs and the blood red moon tetrads, some guys began to look at how these were laid out. Two of them were in the sign of Virgo. Two of them were in Leo the lion. This is the tetrad. So all of that was pointing actually to 923, because those are the two constellations that are involved in the great sign, the great wonder sign. And then they began to look up some of these things as to what they actually meant. And for example, from the second blood moon, which was on Tabernacles, to the Feast of Trumpets on September 21st was 1,079 days. So they just decided to look up the 1,079th word in Strong's to find out what it was. And guess what? It means birth of the man-child. From the second blood moon to September 23rd was exactly 1,081 days. The 1,081th day is a word which means offspring, child, and fruit. And on it goes. Then on the final blood red moon, it's 726 days. So they looked up what it meant, and Strong's 726. It's about the rapture of the church.
Oh.
So you're dealing with a Lord of huge intelligence who obviously not only programmed the Bible, but also programmed Strong's, which is, of course, directly related to it. So I decided to do a little bit of research on it. And what I found out is absolutely astounding. Just out of curiosity, I'm putting out a new, we got two prophetic insiders, and they're loaded with this stuff that I've worked on. I looked up the word, the 2017th word, 2017, in the Old and the New Testament, as they are listed in Strong's, because there are a number of odd coincidences which we have already brought up and shown. If you look at the 2017th word in the Old Testament, directly relates to Donald Trump, which means turning of things upside down.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That is
if you look
fascinating indeed.
Well, it can't be coincidental because that's exactly what Donald Trump is doing. He's turning everything upside down, and the year is 2017. He took office on the 20th. And that's what he's been doing. Now, what's interesting is that it comes from the 2015th word, 2015th word in Strong, starting from their number one. It means to change, to turn about, to overturn, to overthrow. Now, is that a hint that Trump himself is going to be overthrown? Because
wow, that's interesting.
It's very interesting. Anyway, so then I thought, well, how is it really related to Donald Trump other than what he's doing? I mean, he's attempting to stop or overthrow the establishment, which we could call a communist coup, and he's turning them upside down. Then I started to look at something else. 1 Corinthians. Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. Well, there was a guy on YouTube. He's kind of a cool individual, but that's where I wanted to verify what he was saying. If you look up the word Trump in the New Testament, we get the Strong's Concordance 4536, which actually means quavering, reverberations, and it comes from another word, a root word, 4535, which means a vibration, and the root of it means to shake or to disturb, to agitate, to shake, to throw a tremor, a fear or a concern, to move or to quake. Isn't that exactly what Donald Trump's doing?
Absolutely.
And that is a different word from the word trumpets. So his argument was, look, why would he throw in the word trump when he could have just as easily said trumpets shall sound, and all the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall all be changed. So, people, you got to ask some questions here about the Lord and his ability to actually be doing this kind of thing, that we would only find it out at the very last of the last days, just before the trouble began. The Lord chose a different word for Trump versus trumpets. So obviously it's a clue. Why do we have a president named Trump, who took power in 2017 with a star sign that obviously now is pointing either to a rapture or a rapture very close to it in the time frame that we're looking at? And you cannot forget the 2-year delay from that sandstorm in 2015, which Israel themselves claimed highly, highly, highly unusual. We could say a divine intervention that delayed Feast of Trumpets for 2 days or 2 years, pointing directly to 9/21 Feast of Trumpets this year, 2017. So when you look at Trump, and then you look at what the people were all saying he was Cyrus, what did Cyrus do? He came against Babylon. He destroyed the powers that be at the time, and he allowed the Israelites to go free and return to Jerusalem to rebuild their temple. Well, what's Donald Trump say he's going to do? Going to go back to the embassy in the Capitol and bring them back to Jerusalem, right? Have you heard any more on that, Larry?
For the moment, he's had so many troubles at home, and I find it interesting when you were talking about him overturning things and using the word chaos because, in Dr. Lance Wallnau's book he wrote in Israel and brought back to the U.S., just during the election, the name of his book was entitled Trump, the Chaos Candidate, and that was when he was only the candidate. And just as soon as he was inaugurated, they actually began to call him, they said, chaos in the White House. And so you still have that chaos. Yeah, you still have that term chaos following him everywhere he goes.
Well, it was interesting. I was listening to Fox News. I just happened to pick it up. And one of their commentators said, I guess what we're looking at here with the appointment of Kelly is to get order out of chaos, which is the Masonic motto, order out of chaos.
Yeah.
So I think they were dropping a hint right there as to what's really going on to those who had ears to hear about it. And, of course, you remember that the Sanhedrin wrote letters to both Putin and Trump asking for their help to rebuild the temple. Well, that's all part of Daniel's 70th week. Well, when I looked up the 2017 in the Old Testament, I got what I already reported. But what I got when I looked it up in the New Testament for Strong's, it means to give light, to give wisdom, open up, unseal, to make known, to shine upon, become visible or known, to appear or give light. Isn't that amazing?
That all sounds like right out of the book of Revelation.
Absolutely. It is, really. And it comes out of Daniel. Remember what Daniel said, that in the last days, then everything will be unsealed. The angel told Daniel to seal it up until the time of the end. And at the time of the end, they would unseal all of the mysteries. And here it is, 2017, just before the star sign, give light, open up, unseal, make known, become visible, to appear.
Wow.
Is it coincidental that the word means to appear as well? That 2017 is the end of 120 years from 1897. It's 70 years from 1947. A jubilee from 1967 and the Six-Day War. So all of this is now rapidly being unlocked for the church if they're paying any attention, because the church age appears more and more. I think this absolutely proves that the age of grace is rapidly coming to a close. Now, what was even more interesting, I looked up the word 2018 to see what it would say. Now, if the church age closes and Daniel's 70th week begins, this is what the word says: judicially accuse or inflict, or we could say bring the charges against. That's exactly what Daniel's 70 week is. It's a judicial judgment.
That's the law again.
Yes, exactly. We're moving from grace back to the law. It's a dispensational change. I know a lot of people out there hate the word dispensations and they deny it and they mock it. But whether they don't like it or do like it is immaterial. It obviously is a dispensational change that's coming really, really rapidly. And so then I decided to look up something else. And this is speculation on my part. But remember that Noah was given a 7-day warning before he was shut in. And Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be again. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will destroy them from off the face of the earth. Now, two things we got to remember there. 7-day warning. Is the 7-day warning the equivalent of the midnight cry? And could the midnight cry be the star sign on 9/23/2017? Rather than it being the rapture, it is a sign, a midnight cry, get ready, because I'm coming for you. What is very, very interesting from the solar eclipse that more or less eclipses the United States, I'd like to see the New World Order boys and girls try and stop the eclipse. I mean, I doubt they can do that, but they might try it. But the point is, from that period of time, as we said, it's 33 days to 9/23. But it is 40 days to Atonement, to the Feast of Atonement, which occurs on September 30th. Is it possible that the 7-day warning and the midnight cry are on 9/23/2017, and we have our 7-day warning, and we'll be removed out of here on Atonement? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and it's something you had mentioned earlier in the day. We had talked for a few minutes, and something that really stuck in my mind. You said, what if, when we have the eclipse, what if, when the sun is covered up and dark, they actually see the second sun and it is visible? Wow, would that be a warning or what? Would that be a reality check, Stuart?
Yeah, I guess you could call it a reality check. There's another day in there, and I think I can't remember, but it's a day or a period of time to repent, to look into oneself, a time of repentance, a time of changing your mind. I mean, the Lord has been extremely merciful to the human race. You and I would have hit delete button probably a long time ago. He hasn't. He is extremely, extremely patient with everyone. He says, I don't want any to perish. I want all to come to repentance. So he's doing everything to create this. And so a lot of people are warning about this solar eclipse, that it could kind of unzip the United States and we could have major earthquakes. And as we pointed out before, we had that 7.7 earthquake that was 7 miles deep that took place on 7/7/7. Kind of like, okay, I'm giving you a warning. Have you got any ears to hear any of this? And so you may be right. We may see something other than what we expect on this solar eclipse, and we may see a lot more than we expect on 9/23. You know, we have that 3 hours of darkness that occurred when Jesus was crucified from 12 to 3. is there any possibility that that could occur on 9/23, for example? He gives all kinds of warnings so that we can relate back, because, as I said, we are sub Neanderthals, and we have trouble getting any of our brain molecules running. And, we think of ourselves very, very intelligent. We can't do any of the things the Lord has done. Humanity thinks they're little gods, and yet they cannot create one hydrogen atom out of nothing.
Yeah.
Can't do it. The most simplest of atoms. And they can't do it. They can't bring it out of nowhere. And yet they assume they are highly intelligent. When in reality, when they're trying to match the Lord's intelligence, it's a no-brainer. But I'm very, very curious if the 7th day, and it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Well, how is it that from the eclipse, it's exactly 40 days to atonement? So,
wow, that's it.
I mean, it's just, these things are very curious, I guess one could say. So, I don't know. I guess people are just going to have to really watch. Pray always that they be found worthy to stand before the Son of Man and escape. I think all of this dovetails in to an early surprise rapture of the church and then sudden destruction. If the rapture itself is not sudden destruction, which I believe it is, because it says that sudden destruction will come upon all those, as a snare, shall it come upon all those that dwell upon the face of the earth. If you look up the word dwell, it means permanent residence. The Christian is not a permanent residence. A Christian is referred to as a sojourner. You're just traveling through, but you're not a permanent residence here. So, it comes upon all those who dwell upon the whole earth. That's a global event. It's instantaneous, as a snare is sprung, instantaneous. All of a sudden, you're just trapped. And the Lord said, I've laid a snare for you. So, a rapture is a worldwide event. And it probably would cause total chaos. In fact, the guy that had that vision, which was really about those who were left behind, he said it caused, when the resurrection of the dead occurred, that it was just total chaos all over the world. So anyway, that's the latest that I have, Larry. What have you got cooking that go? When you look at Trump and what it means, isn't that what we're seeing?
Well, I think that it is, and what's interesting is this is July the 31st, midnight tonight. It'll be August the 1st, which
yes.
puts us in line with approaching that eclipse very soon, and the 9/23 sign after that. And at the same time, presently, the Democrats, the establishment Republicans, and the deep state want Trump gone. They want him out. They want him gone. They want him removed. And there seems to be, and there's a soft coup going on right now that has been going on since his inauguration. That is, it's total chaos even, and I find that interesting. That individual, Arthur Abkeo, coming up on the news reports, that could be a literal sign that that's what they're planning, is to actually, they're wanting to bring in something to control after the so-called Trump chaos as they're letting out. And that's all the mainstream press has created since the election. Is they're creating the chaos. It's the press that's doing that. And what I find interesting, though, Stuart, is the fact that here we are, we've got this Cyrus supposedly in office, that they're wanting to remove one way or the other. And I'm thinking, well, that throws another monkey wrench into the deal, because it just goes along with the time frame we're in. We're in a time of chaos, actually, and and this is more created chaos. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, okay, what will the Creator do if he wants Trump in longer in office? Then possibly he has to do something to keep him in that place, and at the same time reach the pivot point, as we've called it, or I call it that, especially, and I believe you agree, where we actually pivot from all the data in the USA back to the Middle East.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think there's any question in my mind now that the age of grace is going to close. And exactly as to when, from that point forward, the Lord decides to, grab his people so that they can enter into the chambers, as it says in Isaiah, and ride out the indignation, which is Daniel's 70th week. And I find something else very interesting, because the Feast of Atonement is on 9/30/2017. If you add those letters together, you come to 22. And the number 22 in the Bible means light. Isn't that interesting? Because 2017 in the New Testament, the 2017th word, is the same thing, light.
Huh.
Now, how's that possible?
Wow.
I mean, it just goes on and on and on, and the more I dig, the more I find. And it's almost like the Lord is just pouring out this stuff, and very few people really are listening. I think they're saying, well, that's kind of interesting, but then they forget about it. I would advise people not to forget about any of this. Once, if in fact the age of grace is closed and the church is taken out, that die is cast. And you got to remember, in Matthew chapter 7, where the Lord rejects many Christians. So this is not a time to be fooling around. This is a time, like it says, repent, because he's returning. And atonement, as you know, Larry, a lot of times they use the word atonement. They would call it at-one-ment or union.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, it looks very, very suspicious. Can't say that's the way it's going to be. Maybe we go through this whole thing and not a thing happens. But I just doubt that. There's too much. What do you think? It's too much.
I think you're right. The data seems to be overwhelming, and the more you look, the more you find. And one reason I thought of the missiles of October again today was I looked on the Deo news site, and they've reposted Henry Gruber's warnings about Russia nuking the USA. Yes. They've got his videos back on there, and I thought, apropos.
Yep, and that would be about right, October. Missiles of October. We've waited every October since you told me about that. I cringe a little bit because you're just waiting to see if something's coming. So anyway, folks, wake up. That's all I can tell you. Wake up. This is serious business. Nothing more serious than dealing with the Lord and his awesome, awesome power. But at the same time, his awesome, awesome love for humanity. All he's asking for people to do is repent, a godly repentance. And anyway, Larry, thanks for coming on. Any final comment?
Well, I was just going to mention we're looking at trying to get Richard Shaw back on with some new Torah codes later in the week, so we'll just see.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Larry, for coming on. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you again. Good night.